Hello, everyone. Hello, Saints fans. Our From the Press Box is going to start from Charlotte, where the Saints in Carolina played. And it was a rough afternoon, a week after things looked so perfectly against the Green Bay Packers. They completely pulled a 180 against Carolina. The Saints lose 26-7. And some of the stats that jump out, following this game, almost just like the Packers game, are staggering. Unless you want to talk about Deontay Harris, Peyton Turner, and Demario Davis, certainly some bright spots in what was a rather gloomy afternoon of football in Charlotte. Offensively, the Saints just could never get going. I mean, just never found any kind of rhythm. They gained 128 total yards. I believe that's the lowest in the Sean Payton era. They had six first downs. Never really tried to establish the run. They had two rushing attempts in the first half. Alvin Kamara had two rushing attempts, and I believe it was for 2 yards. So just never really got into any kind of rhythm. A couple of interceptions by Jameis Winston. Yet in the fourth quarter, as badly as this team had played, got a couple of breaks, and they were down 17-7 and had the ball at their own 10-yard line, down 17-7, 9:42 to play in the fourth quarter. You're thinking, all right, you score here, it's a new ball game. The pressure, is on Carolina. The Saints go 3 and out. Really kind of fortunate that it wasn't a fumble or an interception by Jameis, ruled an incomplete pass. They punted. Carolina scored a touchdown. Christian McCaffrey. Carolina gets it back. Field goal, ball game, 26-7. So a week after where everything went right, it was everything going wrong. Penalties. The Saints had 11 penalties, 2 interceptions. Third down, the Saints were 2 of 11. Carolina was 8 of 15, 53%. Time of possession, which can sometimes be a little misleading. Saints had 21 minutes, 28 seconds time of possession. Carolina, 38 minutes, so close to 39 minutes. Very one-sided affair. Jeff Nowak will join us to talk about this, and I had to have felt as bad on television watching this game as it did sitting in the radio booth. I think we can all understand how the Packers felt, right? I was just like, it just never felt like this offense or defense could get anything going.
Yeah, Sean after the game basically said, this was essentially the inverse of what happened last week, where the Packers just got steamrolled. The Saints were the ones getting steamrolled this week. One thing that really stood out to me watching it was, just how much the assistant coaches feel valuable. It was hard to quantify before this week, but, when you look at a team that just didn't look right, a team that always seems to be prepared and coached very well, just came into this game and something felt like it was missing, especially in the offensive line with a group that didn't have its offensive line coach, Brandon Nugent. He was actually at the game, but he wasn't there all week to prep, and you have to imagine that's an impact. The team, the coaches, Sean Payton wouldn't put the result on that, but lend a bit of, it's not an excuse, but it's at least a valid reason for why things look so bad. Because, I have to imagine watching live, it had to feel just throughout that.
Right. And the numbers, just looking through the game book afterwards, it's just something I've never seen. We thought initially we said 6 first downs. That's a drive. That was a drive last week. That was their game total. Now, the Saints at one point in their history, the record was 2. That was the fewest they had, so they didn't get close to that. But after just 1 week of football, to have the amount of injuries that this football team had and where they were, in the secondary, no Marshawn Lattimore, no Chauncey Gardner, no Quan, and so you got Desmond Trufant, you got Bradley Roby, and the secondary was just a step off. There were some good passes by Sam Darnold to DJ Moore, but it was like if the Panthers needed a 3rd and 8, they got it. They just had the pass just enough. To lose really that many players after just 1 week, in a week where you dominated and you lose 5 that did not practice, didn't play, some were inactive, 3 went to IR. Marshawn Lattimore, and CD Deuce didn't play. So you had a lot of new guys, in new positions. Paulson Adebo is, he had a great game last week, and it's the NFL. It is what it is. But, on the positive side, if you find anything, certainly Peyton Turner in his, first action was, significant with the sack and tackles for a loss. I mean, he was a force to be had. And Deontay Harris, I mean, I can't remember ever 5 kickoff returns in a football game in the NFL in this day and time. To have 5 and average 31 yards a return, I was stunned they kept kicking to him because he was really, the one spark that the offense had was getting good field position. Hats off to Carolina. They were clearly more prepared than the Saints were, and they didn't have 8 missing assistant coaches. But I mean, you can't say the Saints were brilliant and the best team ever against the Packers and Sean Payton's a genius, and now they're all don't know what they're doing. That's not true. It's probably somewhere in between. They weren't as good as last week, and they're certainly not as bad as they showed against Carolina.
Yeah, the cliche I always go back to is no team is ever as good as they look on their best day or as bad as they look on their worst day. And I think we have both dynamics in 2 weeks, which is kind of incredible. One thing I'll say is Deontay Harris earlier in the week, he spoke to the media and he said that he wishes people would start kicking to him again because he gets bored back there. And the Panthers clearly felt like, hey, we don't want him to be bored, so we'll kick to him. And he had a great day. The interesting thing about the defense is, the defense did enough to win this game. They held the Panthers scoreless in the third quarter. 17 points through 3 quarters is a solid result. You got to put up points to win. I don't know if the Saints could have put up 24 points in 8 quarters the way they were playing. But that was the group I expected to struggle. Sam Darnold did Malcolm Roach a favor with that little here, you take interception. That really kind of set up the Saints' only score of the day. But I do think that it's worth noting, and I'm curious to hear your take. 1-1 is a very familiar situation for the Saints. They have not started 2-0 in a season since 2013. Each of the last 3 years they have started 1-1. And if we want to kind of put some perspective onto the feelings after this game, as bad as it was, as difficult as it is kind of be to spin it positively, it's not worse than 2019. After week 2 of 2019, you lost Breeze for, you expected 6 weeks. He came back earlier. You were headed out to Seattle with Teddy Bridgewater, who you had no idea what to expect. He just looked awful in the rest of the Rams game after he took over. And this team went 13-3 that season. While you don't have to Breeze anymore, a lot of the team is the same. I pointed that out, and someone said, "Well, the offensive line was better at that point." They weren't. This is the same offensive line. The only difference is they've replaced Larry Warford with Cesar Ruiz, and obviously McCoy is hurt. But I think that when you kind of take a step back, we've seen this before. There's reasons to be that you might be concerned and you have to fix stuff. But I think pumping the brakes is a good strategy right now.
Yeah, you can't get too down, you can't get too up. I mean, you got New England this week. I think the injuries played a significant part. And because whenever Carolina needed that play, when they needed the 3rd and 5, the 3rd and 8, whatever, they were able to do it. They did it in the air. And I just, I think when you get the secondary a little more healthy and a little more, you get Marshawn back and Chauncey Gardner back, and then everybody gets back maybe their normal positions a little bit. Going to be without Quan and Marcus for 3 games as they go on IR. There's no formula. You would think, okay, we were going to see a ton of Juwan Johnson today after last week. What was he targeted once? Made that one catch late in the game. And so it surprised me that they just kind of came out throwing the ball as much as they did, didn't really run it. They had a lot of penalties, illegal motion, false starts, get going. It just felt, it was like, can we sync this up? Something is out of sync. I mean, the offense was starting, but the ball hadn't been snapped. It just felt, and that was the first series, right? It just felt out of sync. So another week of practice at TCU, very big game. against New England. They're a different team, just like we're a different team, right? So you're right. They've been perennial slow starters. One in it was 2017. They were 0-2 coming here to Charlotte and got the win there before going to play in London against Miami. It started a big streak. So I don't know if this team, maybe it's too early, it's going to be that streaky team that we've seen in years past with Sean Payton. I don't know that. It's too early. Too much to wait and see on, but it's one game. Just like we said last week, one game, relax. It's one game, relax.
Well, and here's one more note. So you mentioned that the 128 yards of offense is the least in the Sean Payton era. It's actually worse than that because it's the least in the Sean Payton era by about a half a football field, about 48 yards lower than the second lowest total now. And if you remember, that total actually came during that 2019 season that I mentioned earlier. It was the 12-10 win over the Dallas Cowboys. So the Saints actually won the game that had previously marked the lowest yardage output. And if that doesn't just tell you this team can win in a variety of ways, I don't know what else to tell you. But one of the things that Teron Armstead said after the game was, they had communication issues. There was from the start, from the quarterback to the center, from the center to the rest of the line, just kind of communicating coverages and communicating protections. Did you feel like the crowd noise was a factor? Did it seem like a really hot crowd relative to what you would normally expect? Obviously, you only have Jacksonville to go off of, but
no, it didn't to me. I mean, they probably, I don't think there was 70% of the fans there. I mean, there were times when it was loud, but nothing that maybe because it's just been a while, right? It's been a while since these guys have dealt with any kind of crowd noise. This would not have been a factor in 2019, I can assure you, because you were used to it. Now it's been a while. So maybe that, and last week was kind of Packers, Saints. I mean, it was, I wouldn't say it was half, but it was different. It didn't feel like a home game. It didn't feel like a road game. So it was, I mean, I could see where it did impact communication, but believe me, it's going to get a lot louder because they're going to be stadiums that are full instead of stadiums that are 70% at capacity.
And one other thing that I think shouldn't be overlooked, you watch the Panthers with players go down one after another. They're dropping like flies. They actually went into the game very healthy, unlike the Saints, who went into the game incredibly banged up. But the Saints just got out of that game healthy, at least the players who were healthy enough to play to begin with. I was worried about Jameis Winston. I mean, there was a point that I was like, they might need to take him out and put Taysom Hill in there just because Taysom might have an easier time protecting himself. That's how bad the protection was. And I think that is a silver lining that, you didn't have Drew Brees broke his ribs last year. Those are the type of hits that break ribs. And I think escaping that game with, just a loss on the field and not personnel losses is a positive thing, considering how it went.
Yeah, I agree. They can't afford any more injuries after what happened in week one. And I'll leave you with this. And, as they head to New England, and that is as you mentioned Taysom, I don't really understand Taysom Hill right now. And with this offense, I'm like, I don't know when he comes in, I can't figure it out. And he's in some, not really as a receiver, but, he played quarterback a little bit, it just feels a little like we're searching for him identity-wise with this offense. Now, maybe that's overreaching after one game, but I don't know. It feels a little different.
Yeah, I think that 4th and 5 play in the first half was a good example where they sent him out there. I don't know if he didn't like the look he got, whatever. He called a timeout, and then they sent Jameis out there, and he took a sack for his turnover. And it's like, I think that's a perfect example of like Sean Payton will say we have a clear vision for what Taysom Hill's role is. If there is a clear vision, I'm not seeing it. So I think that's an interesting point.
Well, Saints fans, relax. One more road game at New England, Foxborough. Then this football team will come home, and they will be home. And that Giants game will be I can't wait to have the fans and see them in the Caesars Superdome. And then we'll hear what I believe will be some real crowd noise. Today was loud given what we've seen, but I'm looking forward to that Giants game and Saints fans and seeing everybody back in Caesars Superdome.